Hey, one of our vendors called this morning and left a message for Robert.
I don't think we have any Roberts that work here.
We've got at least a couple.
Well, nobody calls me Robert. I only go by that while I'm at the airport.
Well, it could have been for me, except I don't remember ordering a complete set of Mr. Belvedere on VHS. Welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Robert.
And I'm Robert.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, big films, small movies, everything in between. Robert, did you hear what happened at the convenience store last night?
I did not. No one told me.
It was robbed.
Was it?
It was. Right after we closed the store, a few ne'er-do-wells emptied the cash registers, probably helped themselves to a few Twinkies, some RC Cola without paying a dime. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. But the one thing I can't get out of my head is the term robbed.
It doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't. It's a derogatory association with the name Robert. If it were up to me, I'd say the store was burgled or something.
Yes. That's how I would say it.
Yes. A much better term for what took place. And of course, I'm fixated on this choice of words because you and I have an especially personal connection with the name Robert. You're a Robert.
Yes, technically we both are.
We are both Roberts.
But full disclosure, I'm Rob.
And I'm Bob. And we are in charge of curating the staff recommendation shelf here at Rewind Video. And we took it upon ourselves to remind the world that any iteration of the name Robert ought to be respected.
Celebrated.
And celebrated, yes. Each time we update the staff recommendation shelf with new movies, we adhere to a theme. And this week's theme is Roberts in film.
But which Robert is which? We'll never tell.
Question. Yes. So this felt like an exciting theme, maybe long overdue.
Yeah, I mean, people were clamoring for this.
They were.
I think.
They were.
If I'm understanding the emails correctly.
And I think you are. There's also a lot of latitude here. I think our criteria was any iteration of Robert. So Bob, Robb, Robbie, first name, last name, could be an actor, could be a character in a film, could be a movie director.
Yeah.
I think we would even have accepted like best boy named Robert counts.
I would have been a little upset about that, but yeah, for the most part, we've become pretty lenient with our topics.
Well, what is a Robert if he's not a best boy?
Well, they're all best boys, even the ladies.
Yes, right. Yeah, so really spanning some genres here. Not a lot of criteria in the traditional sense of a theme, but still very much a theme. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see that across all 6 of our movies.
I don't feel like any of the movies we chose tonight, maybe because this movie doesn't exist, but none of them really addressed what it's like to really be a Robert, you know?
Well,
and I think that's something me and you are still looking for.
You know, you're not wrong. I did choose some movies with characters that have either characters or actors with Robert in a name who embody the characteristics that I associate with an ideal Robert.
That's good. What is your ideal Robert?
Oh, boy. Well, I think a wealth of knowledge as it relates to film. Mm-hmm. That's point number 1.
Interesting.
A guy you can count on.
A guy you can count on.
Yeah.
Good fashion sense.
Great fashion sense. Jackets, hats,
haircuts.
Sunglasses.
Yes. Well, we're going to get into a little bit of the nickname aspect of Roberts as well.
Yeah.
Which will be fun.
You know, it's a name that has more nicknames than most full names do.
Yes. And of course, there's other variants of it.
There's variants of
Roberta.
spellings. Yeah, Roberta. The various Bobbies, male and female. Well, I'm excited. I think we've got some fun stuff to discuss. And as always, you kick us off. So why don't you get us started with your first Robert in film?
Okay, I'm going to start us off in 1992 with something that has I mean, just a lot of Robert here. There's a lot of Robert here.
Yes.
Right here, right at the top. It's called Bob Roberts.
You doubled down.
I doubled down on
love
Roberts. This is written and directed by Tim Robbins. Not quite a Robert.
But really close.
I mean, related in some way.
I believe that if he had had the choice, he probably would have gone with Tim Roberts rather than Tim Robbins. Yeah.
This is in the American Values section of the store. That's a big section of our store. Here's the back of the box. Millionaire conservative Bob Roberts launches an insurgent campaign against incumbent Senator Brickley Paste, firing up crowds at his rallies by singing 60s-style acoustic folk songs with lyrics espousing far-right conservative social and economic views. Tagline, vote first, ask questions later. I like that one a lot.
I like that one a lot. Yeah, that's at least an A- for me. Maybe just a solid A.
It's definitely up there. Bob Roberts is Tim Robbins' 1992 mockumentary about a folk musician who becomes a political icon during a Pennsylvania Senate campaign.
Yes.
Which is a ridiculous idea because, I mean, people don't care that much about folk music.
No, they don't, but it sure is catchy.
Oh, yeah. I will admit, as long as you're willing to ignore the lyrics to these songs,
right.
At least half of them are like catchy tunes.
Yeah.
They're
earworms.
They're earworms, but they're not maybe not fully fleshed out songs, but like, yeah, they're toe tapping. I like them.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote them.
Yeah.
Even though this was made in the era of the first George Bush and the first Iraq War, its take on politics and the media manipulation, and a charismatic populist figure, I think are pretty relevant to today's politics. At least as much as they were then, I think.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Bob Roberts comes across as this character who brings something to the table that is different from the average politician, which we have seen in American elections. And while I disagree with this guy's political views, it's at least more palatable than being a reality television host.
He does. I mean, it seems like a combination of, the Republican ticket this year. Like it has like both of those guys. It's kind of like if J.D. Vance learned how to play a guitar,
right?
But yeah, it kind of saw today's politics coming from a mile away, and I think maybe it's because like things haven't changed as much as we thought, as much as we think they have. Just maybe kind of around the edges enough that make
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend like I knew what the fuck was happening in the world in 1992. I definitely didn't. Right. Yeah. So like I can't really speak to that, but like Tim Robbins saw this and like it seems like this movie could have been made today.
Well, I saw it for the first time for this theme. So this is my first dose of Bob Roberts, and I could not stop thinking about just how familiar all of this feels. Just in a sense that, like, this guy has a shtick. He is, trying to endear himself to his, voting, to the voting populace, not by way necessarily of just talking about hardline issues, but giving them something else that they can be excited about. And
yeah.
It's not far off from reality at all.
And he's clearly trying to, he gives us this image of he's just one of us. He understands, he's being honest, he's speaking, he tells it like it is and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But everything about him is disingenuous.
Yes.
Top to bottom.
Oh, yes.
Every little bit of him is an act that it's all put on. And I think one of the things that Tim Robbins said in a behind the scenes or making of video that I saw was, he's like, one of the reasons I was intrigued by the idea of making it a mockumentary was that because of that, you never see who the real Bob Roberts is. There's never a moment where, you see him like when he's not in front of people and then like has a moment like the true Bob Roberts. Like you only see what this documentary crew would see.
Right.
And so it leaves up that curtain that you barely get to peek behind.
Yeah. There's never that moment where he's sitting on the edge of his bed before going to sleep, just reflecting.
Like, honey, is it all worth it? Like, and her going, no, you've sold your soul, to Satan.
Yeah.
I bet you didn't know that this was a character that started on Saturday Night Live.
Well, there is a scene in the movie that tips its hat to Saturday Night Live, and I wasn't sure if that was just like, this is the type of thing a candidate would do, or if there was something deeper behind it. So I'm not surprised to hear that. Yeah,
it was from a short in 1986, and I could not track it down. Saturday Night Live is like really protective of the stuff that like they don't officially release, and I couldn't find it. The cast here is like kind of ridiculous.
Yes.
Like pretty much every single person in this movie is somebody.
Yes.
Like movie stars, character actors, everybody in between. Every person is recognizable. There's Alan Rickman, Giancarlo Esposito. There were Susan Sarandon, Peter Gallagher, James Spader, Fred Ward, John Cusack, Jack Black.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Even going further down the cast list, there's like, the president of NBC from Seinfeld. There's the mom from Lean on Me, the guy from Twin Peaks. There's Bela Lugosi's body double from Ed Wood. It's like every single person in this movie, you're like, oh, I recognize them from something. And Tim Robbins specifically used the biggest names in his cast to be the newscasters.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to use movie stars because every newscaster secretly wants to be a movie star.
So true. We've talked about this.
Which is true. But like we've also talked about how like actors don't quite get it right. Mm-mm. And you notice it here because when actors are playing these local newscasters, they're reacting to the words. They're reacting to what the news that they're reading, and they're like, listening to it. Whereas like a real newscasters, they have this energy and cadence that exists completely separate from the news copy that is just like flowing through their face.
Yes.
They just have a cadence and it just goes, and there's a vessel that these words flow through. And real actors don't quite get that right. There was one, I can't remember who she was, but one I was like, I almost believe that she's a newscaster.
Yeah. Is it the black woman at the beginning who is?
No, she was like a talk show host, a local talk show host.
Like
I can't remember who, but mostly they just like it doesn't really work.
I don't disagree. Yeah,
but it's funny here. It's actually kind of funny.
It is. Yeah. This movie has some truly funny moments.
Yeah. So this is rated 3.6 overall on Letterboxd. 14 users have it in their 4 favorites.
Only 14?
14.
Okay.
One of those is me.
Okay.
Because I hadn't seen this movie in at least 20 years. And I was kind of floored by it.
Yeah.
I really dug this. A lot of it was familiar, but I thought it was so good. So I gave this a 5-star rating on this viewing.
Nice.
6% of people agree with me, including Letterboxd user Dan Gorman, who says in his review that was written at the beginning of 2020, January 2020, me in high school. Ha ha ha, what incredible satire. Me now, sweating.
Yes.
Which is kind of my experience with it. I think, it's a movie that's not afraid to have a point of view at all.
Yeah.
Which is kind of rare for a movie that features this kind of like star power. Obviously it wasn't like a big budget movie. 30 years later, it still has like a really keen eye for the world of politics. And so I'm putting it up on the staff recommendation shelf this week for the topic of Roberts.
I had only barely heard of this movie before this theme. So was very excited to see it. I left wondering, so I think it's so fitting that Bob Roberts is a Republican candidate, given the way that party has steered itself in recent years. I can't help but to wonder if from here on out, even after the current candidate is long gone, if every candidate isn't going to have some thing about them to distract the world from what they're really talking about.
Right.
Which I think is what makes the character of Bob Roberts so interesting to watch, because like if you just listen to what he's saying, it's pretty terrifying. But if you turn it into a folk song,
even some of his songs are absurd because on one side of his mouth he's saying I'm a self-made man, and on the other side of his mouth he's like, well, I took the money I inherited from my grandma and invested it, the right way. And that's how I'm a self-made man from this inheritance.
Well, I think that's just another poignant commentary on modern politics, which is just that people aren't paying close enough attention.
Yeah.
And
here's the thing, people, like, every politician has to be a politician on some level. That's just part of the job. But I guess it's like, what are you willing to put up with?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people who voted for Bob Roberts are willing to put up with a lot of stuff.
Quite a bit. Well, great pick. This was a fun one to watch. I'm going to make my first pick another Robert heavy film in the sense that it's a character, it's in the title, and what I am choosing is the Bob's Burgers movie from 2022.
Delicious.
Yeah. And let me give you the back of the box for this. This is the Belcher family facing a dire situation when a sinkhole forms in front of their restaurant, blocking the entrance and jeopardizing their business. As Bob and Linda struggle to keep the restaurant afloat, their kids, Tina, Jean, and Louise, take on a mission to solve a mystery that could save the day. This lively adventure brings all the humor, heart, and quirkiness that fans of the show have come to love, wrapped up in a larger-than-life musical adventure. Tagline, let's get this patty started.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
it's laughed involuntarily. It's got at least a B from me.
It's, I think, true of the sense of humor of this show. And,
they appreciate a pun.
They do, and they do them well. The names of the burgers, the store next door.
Now, isn't this a TV show, Bob?
Well, glad you asked, Rob. Yes, it is a movie that is a spin-off of the TV show. So same character. I mean, it's literally just a larger-than-life episode of the Bob's Burgers show, which
this is true.
Is great. I mean, it's a wholesome show. It's been great since the beginning, and the movie is no different.
You're known for how much you appreciate wholesome entertainment.
I do, yes.
Such as the Bob's Burgers movie, the cook, his wife, the thief, and the whatever.
Robb.
Yes. Wholesome family entertainment.
Yeah, yeah. If you can't eat people, eat some burgers.
Yeah, that's the order I go in.
So how does this fit the theme? Well, obviously, Bob Belcher is a Robert, and yeah, this is centers around him and his family. He is, of course, the patriarch of the Belcher family, and yeah, he's the heart and soul of this series. I think that as we'll get to in the review that I plucked, he goes through some trials and tribulations in the series and certainly in the movie, but he's such a standout character, and there's so much to laugh at in this series and what he brings to the story. But yeah, some background on this. It was this was a long-awaited film. It had been announced way back, and development began long before it was eventually released. There were a lot of delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was originally supposed to come out in 2020, ended up getting pushed to 2022. But yeah, everyone who voices the characters in the show came back, all the animators. However, they did pour a little more love into animating the movie than they do the show. There's a lot of
the production values
are
kicked up a little bit.
Definitely higher, yeah. But the creators, Lauren Bouchard and Bernard Derriman, definitely wanted to craft a story that felt like it was bigger than an episode, but still had all of the hallmarks of a classic Bob's Burgers story. And for fans of the show, tons of Easter eggs buried within practically every scene. But I think you can go into this without knowing much about the show or the characters, and maybe even treat this as an introduction if you wanted to.
You definitely could. But it's just like a TV show, a sitcom like that. Like, you can just hop in wherever. It doesn't really matter that much. And totally. Yeah, sure, you want to hop in with the feature film? Why not?
Yeah.
You get the gist of the show.
I think you do.
It's barely different.
It's barely different, yeah. And I mean, really all you need to know is that this is a family. There's a burger restaurant, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
Cast here, as is true with the show, is excellent top to bottom. So H. John Benjamin plays Bob Belcher. We know his voice work from several films, and including Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah.
Plays a can of beans.
He was Archer as well.
He was Archer.
And he was the son on Dr. Katz.
That's true. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
We also get another Robert in the actor who plays Linda Belcher, which is John Roberts. It's a man voicing that character. Yeah, so John Roberts playing Linda Belcher.
I didn't even catch that one.
Yeah, just full of Roberts here.
Full.
Dan Mintz plays Tina Belcher. Eugene Merman is so fucking funny as Gene, and then Kristen Schaal is Louise Belcher. But there's a lot of cameo voices throughout here. Paul Rudd plays Jericho the horse. That's a returning character. There's a lot of fun to be had in just picking out some of the familiar voices. But why did I choose this? I think this is a love letter to longtime fans of Bob's Burgers. But it definitely stands on its own. I think there's a lot here that, like I said, you don't need to have seen anything. You can just jump right in and find a lot to appreciate. We also get a great Bob here. I remember a Reddit post from not too long ago.
Love a good Bob episode.
Yeah, a good Bob episode is so good. But yeah, there was a Reddit post from not too long ago that posed this challenge to commenters, and this is this is the post in a nutshell. It said, "Name a sitcom where every member of the family is likable. The father provides for his family, and functions as a role model, and he's also not married to a woman who is somehow way out of his league in terms of attractiveness." And I think the poster of this thought, well, nothing fits this bill, but overwhelmingly, the top response was Bob's Burgers. This does all of that.
It's a very relatable family. It's a very relatable show.
Yeah, I think it's a better representation of modern America. For as ridiculous as it can be, it's still grounded in a lot of reality.
It actually kind of reminds me of the original Roseanne show. In that sense, where it depicts working class life in a realistic way. Yeah.
I think that's a great comparison, which is funny to think about in terms of where at least the the main character of that show has ended up. But
well, Roseanne is a genuinely crazy person.
Oh yeah,
and I think people put up with it for probably longer than they should have.
For
Let's
sure.
Just put it that way. But I'm a big fan of Bob's Burgers. The show. I like the movie.
You like the music?
I like the music. They use music fantastically.
Oh, yeah.
Like any good sitcom, especially an animated sitcom, it's just a joke machine.
Yes.
They set up the world. They set up likable characters or just well-developed characters, and they just dump jokes in, and that's just that's what these are for. And the movie functions similarly,
Yeah.
But you don't have to necessarily have a familiarity with the show.
I find this sense of humor to be right up my alley. Mm-hmm. So in terms of that joke machine functioning, it's firing on all cylinders in my book.
Big fan of puns you are.
Well, This averages a 3.6 on Letterboxd, and 26% of users agree with my 4-star review. There are 746 members with this in their 4 favorites. But I was fond of 24 Frames of Nick's 4-star review, where he said, "Bob suffers more than any other character in fiction." That's the plight of a Bob. We suffer, we persevere, we triumph.
Nobody understands what it's like to be a Robert.
Yeah.
Whether that's a Bob, a Rob, a Roberta, a Roberts, no one really gets it except for us.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. So this is going on the shelf. It's my first pick for our Roberts in Cinema theme.
Good choice. Okay, I'm going to take us to 2023, just a year after Bob's Burgers. The movie is called Leave the World Behind. This is written and directed by Sam Esmail, filed under Boojpocalypse. Here's the back of the box. A family's getaway to a luxurious rental home takes an ominous turn when a cyber attack knocks out their devices and 2 strangers appear at their door. Tagline, "There's no going back to normal."
Yeah, leave something to be desired.
Kind of lame.
Yeah.
Pretty lame. Leave the World Behind is a doomsday thriller / black comedy.
Yeah, little column A, little column B.
Yeah, based on a 2020 novel by Ruman Alam.
Oh, I didn't realize this was based on a book.
It is. A book I've never read. It stars Mahershala Ali and Ethan Hawke and Julia Roberts.
There it is.
I know you were all waiting for it. Who plays an advertising sales rep who surprises her family booking a spur-of-the-moment Airbnb outside of the city because, as she puts it, she fucking hates people and just needs to get away. So while they're out at this, it's not really a cabin. It's a mansion in the woods.
Mansion,
things start to go awry. The cell service gets spotty, then goes out completely. There's strange noises. Animals are acting weird. Like all this just kind of weird stuff is happening.
Yeah.
When the owner of the Airbnb comes back, because things are like falling apart in New York.
We also get a giant boat that washes.
There's also a boat washes ashore, comes aground. There's this added conflict of whether how everyone in the situation is able to trust each other.
Yeah.
Because no one really knows what's happening. Some people might know more than others. It's kind of unclear to everybody. No one really knows who everybody is. They're just kind of dealt with each other in the way people deal with each other nowadays, which is through apps.
Yeah.
Which maybe is one of the nitpicks here is like there's some safety features on these apps that could have cleared things up.
I agree.
So I think the themes here are kind of a little all over the place, but its main point is that no matter what you think of the world around you and how it works, there's no real way to escape it. There's no way to get out of your responsibility for it. You don't get to move to a different state or country or planet. You can't just decide you're part of it anymore.
Yeah.
Even if you go out to the woods, even if you're off grid, you're not. Which is a myth. No one's off grid.
No, you're not off the grid.
The only way you're off grid is if you run naked into the woods and never contact civilization again.
Yeah, that's a castaway situation.
Yeah. That's truly off grid. No one's really off grid. Did you make your own tools? Did you build your own vehicles? No. Did you turn your oil into gasoline? No, you didn't.
Yeah.
I think tonally this is a little M. Nightian.
It is, but more reined in.
I was going to say it's connected to reality. His movies are in outer space nowadays, and they kind of always have been.
Yeah.
And I think not necessarily in a bad way every time, but this is definitely more realistic than something like that. I think this is way more compelling than something like Knock at the Cabin, which is it's kind of a version of.
Oh, yeah. And it came out right around the same time.
I think it did. I think that was based on a book also.
Yeah.
But that one, that movie died at its premise. Yes, it was what if strangers showed up during an apocalypse, they knocked on your door, and that's kind of it.
Right.
Not spoiler alert. That's kind of it.
That's kind of it, yeah.
So a moment early in this movie unlocks the dark humor for me when after that oil tanker has run aground at the beach they're all hanging out at, and they're evacuated from the beach and shit is going down. This giant boat ran into the beach. People are out of their minds. And it cuts to them driving home, and Julia Roberts is like, "Oh, look, a Starbucks." I'm like, "Oh, I see. This is a very cynical movie."
Yeah, it's aware of who these people are, who we are as people.
Exactly. The camera work is a little fancy, I think, but I like it. I think it brings it. I don't know. I came down on the positive side. I think it makes everything a little bit claustrophobic.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah. Which is important because I think that's what you're supposed to feel in spite of the fact that these people are in a mansion.
Yes. And the movie doesn't answer a lot of questions. We don't find out what's going on.
Which I love.
Or who is behind it.
Yes.
It reminded me of the movie recently, Civil War.
Yeah.
Which, it's this actually could act as a prequel to that movie in a weird way.
Yeah.
But that movie didn't answer a lot of questions either. It's we're not really here to tell you why this is happening or who did it. And actually, this doesn't even do a really good job of showing you how people would deal with it. You see a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Mostly it's just how would it feel if you were just kind of abandoned?
To that point, I also think that it has something in common with the Quiet Place movies. You're just not explaining what's going on there. It's just you're following these people that are thrust into this crazy situation.
Yeah. Well, at least in the Quiet Place movies, at least the first couple, there was the dad was like trying to figure it out.
That's
And
true.
they didn't really do it. They didn't really get into it that much, but there was always like there was an element of there's a problem that we can solve here, and then they did kind of solve it.
Yeah.
Here it's just like, what? We don't have a cell phone. We're fucked.
Yeah.
And like they don't like figure out how to solve it. They're just like, we're kind of fucked, right?
Yeah.
We should be watching some TV.
This was a divisive movie. I remember having a lot of conversations with a lot of people when this came out because, it's kind of still lingering COVID things.
Yes.
And
It's very COVID coded.
yeah. And I know there was some disagreement on how people felt about the ending, which we don't need to spoil for anyone, but I loved the ending.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought it was fantastic.
It's rated 2.9 overall on Letterboxd, which I think is way too low.
Way too low.
I think it's just one of those movies that either you kind of like are on its wavelength or not, and maybe a lot of people were thinking it was something different.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I'm curious how this movie will play in 5 to 6 to 10 years, whatever.
Well, I think that, it does something different than what we expect from a movie, which is to get all the answers, have things wrapped up nicely in a bow at the end, and you don't get any of that here. But
People said the exact same thing about Civil War. Like,
yeah.
Well, we didn't find out how the Civil War started. It's like, well,
who cares?
yeah. I mean, that's not what the movie's about.
Yeah.
No one goes around talking about how the shit started every day of their lives. Like, they're too busy doing their jobs or whatever it is.
Yes.
So 256 users on Letterboxd have this in their 4 favorites, and only 14% agree with my 4-star rating. That includes user Louis G, who says, it really hasn't been their day, their week, their month, or even their year. Because of its star and producer, Julia Roberts, I'm putting Leave the World Behind up on the staff recommendation shelf this week for the topic of Roberts.
Well, I'll have you know that the number of fans who have this in their favorites has gone up.
Oh, really?
Since you sourced that number. It's now 261.
Oh, shit.
So people are watching it right now.
I'm doing my notes too early.
But yeah, this was a fine pick. I really enjoyed going back to this. I knew when I first saw it that I was already excited about a rewatch, and yeah, it stayed good. I really enjoy this movie, so I hope people give it a chance.
Yeah, I think once it marinates in the culture for a couple years, maybe some people will come back to it.
I hope so too. Well, I'm going to move on to my second pick. We're going back to 1993. This is plucked from the breakfast served all day section of the store. And my second pick is Falling Down. This is another one in the category of movies that feel perhaps more relevant today than they might have when they were released. Let me give you the back of the box. On a hot Los Angeles day, an ordinary man, frustrated by the obstacles of modern life, reaches his breaking point. Armed with nothing more than a briefcase and a growing sense of outrage, he embarks on a violent journey through the city, confronting everyone and everything he believes is responsible for his downward spiral. Tagline: The adventures of an ordinary man at war with the everyday world. I don't know that I would characterize what's going on here as the adventures of.
I definitely would not. There were no adventures here whatsoever.
No. Yeah. I think they were trying to do something with that tagline that falls apart right at the very.
That's
right
pretty
second
hysterical,
word.
actually.
So, yeah.
Kooky adventures of a fucking lunatic.
So this is a Joel Schumacher movie.
Yeah, I had forgotten he had directed this.
Yeah, and every time I'm reminded of Joel Schumacher, I go back to his film resume, and I'm surprised by what's on it, because he of course has some of the more flamboyant Batman movies to his name,
which you came out heavily in favor for in our last episode. I'd like to point that out.
Well, I haven't stopped short of heavily in favor of.
You said
more so than the first.
You are a huge fan of the Schumacher Batman movies, and I'm putting you on blast.
That's fine. I'll take it. But, you know, in addition to those, he's also got, like, The Lost Boys and A Time to Kill and this. Which...
And he was on the shelf before for the Kevin Bacon, Kiefer Sutherland movie. Flatliners.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so Schumacher's got...
friend of the shelf.
He's a friend of the shelf. He's got a interesting resume, but he's not a Robert. Neither is Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas isn't a Robert.
He's not.
Yeah. And
these are non-Roberts.
These are non-Roberts. But we get a great Robert Duvall performance in this. He plays Detective Pendergrast, who kind of plays a nice counterbalance to Michael Douglas's unhinged character. Douglas is, of course, the guy that goes off the rails. Pendergrast is the police officer who happens to be on the last day of his job before retirement, which I couldn't summon the movie that does this with another police officer who's about to retire, but I know I've seen this before, and I wasn't sure if...
Wasn't Lethal Weapon? That was Lethal Weapon.
Is that kind of a Lethal Weapon thing?
It's like in every movie.
Yeah,
From the 80s, 90s. I was like, really? Are they going to do this?
Yeah, I'm about to retire. I wonder what crazy shit I'm going to do with
day.
Yeah. But yeah, so Duvall plays this detective, and he is hot on the trail of Michael Douglas as Douglas is just headed further down the toilet over the course of this, you know.
They really take their time to weave these stories together.
Oh, yeah.
They're just taking their time.
I mean, you know, Michael Douglas could have gotten away with a lot and gotten off scot-free.
We kind of did for a while.
Yeah,
they're taking their time. The cops are taking their time.
Yeah. But Duvall is pretty great, and I think you need a character like his to offset the crazy you get from Michael Douglas. This was shot in the early 90s when Los Angeles was still kind of grappling with some social tensions, including the aftermath of the Rodney King riots. And yeah, it's meant to depict a pretty raw urban environment and, you know, a lot of civil unrest that was going on at the time. So poignant when it was released, I think also relevant today, but for different reasons, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, you know, I think one of the more surprising production details is that Michael Douglas, who prior to this was kind of known for like these suave leading roles, and he was always like the hero and, you know, very likable.
He was like the very like hunky middle-aged leading man.
Yes. And he was very adamant about wanting his character to be more of a downtrodden, decidedly unhinged everyman, which was different than everything he had done in the past. So, you know, even the script went through some changes at the request of Schumacher and Douglas that resulted in the ending being, in their opinion, a little more ambiguous than it was originally written, kind of encouraging audiences to question the morality of the protagonist.
I was going to say, it's pretty unambiguous what happened.
It's unambiguous what happens, but because, you know, spoiler alert, there is a moment at the end where you see his character question, like, oh, have I become the bad guy?
Am I the bad guy?
Yeah. Which
I think, I think that is thematically a really important moment. You need that moment important for it to make sense.
Yeah, you really do. Because, you know, while I don't know that a lot of his actions are relatable throughout this movie, Douglas's character's frustrations with the things that he's encountering are in large part, you know, feel like things we deal with every day. I do, of course, take issue with his somewhat racist rant at the convenience store owner at the beginning.
I take issue with a lot of what he's going off about, but like not everything.
Yeah,
you know, he's kind of like the Unabomber.
Yeah,
you know? Like no, I mean, pretty much against what he's doing.
Yes,
but like, every so often a point comes out of his mouth. You're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
but the right thing to do is nothing about it. You know?
Yeah, just let it roll off your shoulder.
Yeah.
So I mentioned we get Michael Douglas here. He plays William Defense Foster. Robert Duvall is Martin Pendergrass. Barbara Hershey is here as Douglas's estranged wife. Why did I choose this? As I mentioned at the top, feel like this is becoming perhaps a more accurate portrayal of modern day America than it ever was when it was released. Just in a way that, I don't know, you see people having these world star moments at convenience stores and fast food restaurants where they fly off the handle about the littlest shit, and it suddenly doesn't seem so crazy that something like this could happen.
No, we've been building cocoons around ourselves in a lot of ways, mostly technology based. And when people are forced into situations where everything isn't exactly how they want it, I think people are more likely than ever to get unhinged about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think their connection between those two worlds is weaker than ever.
That's such a good way to put it. And, you know, this is, for me, no more than a 3-star movie. I enjoyed it. It's a, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a fun watch, but it is.
It was going for some comedy beats.
It was going for some comedy beats.
This had a little bit of a wink to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it's a 3-star movie also, I think, because it didn't really have a ton to say. It was trying to be kind of a conventional 90s thriller, which I'm not mad at.
Right. Yeah. We're on record saying there's nothing wrong with a 3-star movie. But I would say that the reason I'm bringing it to the shelf is I do think it's worth going back to. It was going for some interesting ideas. It had some interesting themes. Yeah.
It just didn't hit any of them like super hard.
Yes.
It was going for like kind of a more of a mainstream thriller.
I agree. As it relates to our theme, I do love that Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall doesn't always play. I would say rarely plays a leading man. This is as close as he ever really gets. He's kind of co-starring in this alongside Michael Douglas.
But he's a powerful presence.
Oh,
in everything he does.
He's good, and I think he plays this character really well. You know, I mean, both of these guys are dealing with frustrations in their life and in their job, and they come out in very different ways, and you got to applaud the Robert here for doing it in the right way.
Good Robert work in this.
Some great Robert work. Yeah. So great contrast to Douglas's character. This received some pretty mixed reviews upon release. So a lot of people liked Michael Douglas's performance and, of course, Robert Duvall's. But there was also a lot of criticism around the portrayal of violence and morality of the central character. Like I said, Douglas's crime spree kind of begins after a racist tirade at a convenience store, but
like he's not the good guy.
He's not the good guy.
Yeah, the movie is definitely not on this guy's side.
No,
he is a person having a psychotic breakdown. He is a person with mental problems having a psychotic breakdown that are manifesting in a way that could only happen in early '90s Los Angeles. In this guy's life. But yeah, he's not the good guy. The movie is not saying what this guy's doing is okay.
I think it does a good job of giving you enough things that he encounters that are relatable enough that, when somebody who is on the brink of a breakdown, when they experience them all consecutively, you get to see what it could do to a person.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of us, like you said, I think we'd all handle things in a more civil fashion.
Yeah. Do I think a can of Coke should cost 85 cents in 1993? Probably not.
No.
But like, what the fuck are you gonna do about it?
Right.
Don't not buy it.
So 18% of users are aligned with our 3-star rating. 785 have this on their list of favorites. The user Jay had a review that struck with me. He said, Michael Douglas, I'm going to become the Joker. Which I think ties us back to our Batman conversation. So that's going on the shelf as my second pick for our Roberts theme. If you have seen it, or even if you haven't, definitely worth a pickup.
All right. Politically charged episode so far.
I think we're going to get away from
so far. By the way, Before we go any further.
Yes, Robert.
These restaurants, they have to have a cutoff time for breakfast. I'm sorry.
I don't agree.
I know how business works. I know how restaurants work. Especially when it's not like, hey, we're just doing a favor for our buddy. Like McDonald's is a giant corporation. They have to have a
certain time of day. You have to say no.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to everybody who thinks differently, but you're wrong. This is a situation where you're wrong. I am not a McDonald's apologist. I don't recommend eating there.
Right.
But they got to cut you off sometime. Sorry.
What about the diners that serve breakfast all day?
Then go there if you want breakfast all day. Like
that's fair.
They have a different system.
Yeah,
every business has a system.
Okay.
You can't. The customers don't get to decide how it works.
Customers aren't always right. You say respect the system.
Believe me, customers are not always right.
Right. Gotcha.
Not always right. Anyway, right. I'm gonna move us on to something a little bit less politically charged.
Yeah.
The year is 2002. The movie is The Kid Stays in the Picture.
This is another one I had not seen.
Really?
Yeah.
This is directed by Nanette Burstein and Brett Morgan. Morgan went on to Montage of Heck, which was the Kurt Cobain movie.
Yeah.
And Moon Age Daydream, which was the David Bowie movie.
Wow. Okay.
Does this belong in the Hollywood shenanigans section of the store? You better believe it.
I think so. Yes.
Here's the back of the box. Documentary about legendary Paramount producer Robert Evans, based on his famous 1994 autobiography. That is what it is.
Yes. And there's our Robert.
Robert Evans. Tagline: The story of a man who seduced Hollywood.
Accurate. I would say
worked,
that's accurate.
Yeah. I would probably say the man.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, well, we don't want to offend the other guys that did it. It's like, just say the man.
Yeah, the man. Yeah. I mean, when you learn this guy's story,
yes,
he is the man who seduced Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is the kid stays in the picture? It's a documentary about the life and career of Robert Evans, a movie producer and head of Paramount Pictures who was responsible for, among other things, Rosemary's Baby, Love Story, Chinatown, The Godfather, and, of course, Popeye.
Yes,
which barely gets mentioned in this movie. I wonder why. Why did I put documentary in quotes? Because, well, this chronicles true events using archival footage and old photographs. It's basically an audio book version of his book.
Oh, my God, it is.
It's just edited down to 90 minutes. But it's like, did the filmmakers investigate Evans's life or do any original reporting? No, they did not.
Yeah. I actually struggled a little bit with this because of that. Yeah. I mean, it's a compelling story, but I felt very quickly like, oh my God, I'm just listening to an audiobook and watching pictures that vaguely correspond with what I'm hearing. But I mean, it's a guy led an interesting life.
It's a super compelling story. He can tell a story. Yeah. He has a way of talking.
Yeah.
Of asking questions and answering himself.
Yes.
But yeah, they took a version of his own life story and they edited it down into a video collage, essentially. But it's very much the book come to life as a movie. It's 90 minutes. It's a very condensed version of the book. Is Robert Evans the prototypical 70s freewheeling Hollywood producer? You bet he is. Most of the stereotypes that we associate with that sort of character, like the swinging language, the big collars, the sunglasses, the permanent tan, like the cocaine coming out of his ears.
Yeah, the big cars.
At least they're at least partially based on him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He was absolutely a larger than life character. He was out of a cartoon. Mm-hmm. Was he a central figure in New Hollywood? No doubt about it. That generation basically moneyballed the movie business without even realizing it. Evans was a failed actor, and he became a producer when he realized that the key to this business is to own something that other people want. And, his quote is, if you own the property, you're king.
Yes.
And, and it didn't hurt that he was already a millionaire. Because him and his brother basically invented the idea of selling pants to women. That was like not a thing, and they were the first company that was like, "Hey, you can wear pants."
Somebody had to have the idea that women can wear pants,
and they made millions of dollars. So like New Hollywood, they were like about putting the work and the time and defining the good scripts that were relevant to the audience. And, you know, in the time that he was coming to Paramount Pictures, the movie audience, they were just not getting what they want. And it had been a long time since they had gotten, like, they do a good job of showing you, like, the shit that was coming out before that was, like, not relevant. People were just sick of it.
Yeah. Yeah, this reminded me a lot of the documentary A Decade Under the Influence, which kind of chronicles how film changed in the 70s and some of the bigger risks that it took and the movies that really transformed Hollywood. I mean, Robert Evans's pictures are among the films that really represented a turning point for cinema in that era.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely like of the cohort. If he wasn't like, you know, he maybe wasn't the most important person of that era, but like he was close to it if he wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, there was you know, he had a lot to do with it. And he didn't have any experience.
No.
He basically was like, I don't know, I guess he had a good meeting, or, you know, it's like he was like the luckiest guy in the world.
I think, yeah, he's very lucky, but I also think he had some good instincts because, you know, like when I mean, I'm a big fan of Rosemary's Baby, so I was really fixated on the stories behind the development of that movie in this movie. And yeah, when you hear about some of the things that he advocated for and just wouldn't budge on, it's like, okay, well, this guy understands what makes something successful. Even though he wasn't necessarily a great actor himself, he knows what makes for a good movie.
I think the studio executives before this time were not creative executives.
No.
And they aren't anymore either. Right. But like
also agree.
So somebody he was the guy that was in charge of a studio that was like, well, let's make like good movies. Whereas before, I think it was more just like, what do people want? They want to see her? Yeah, that sounds good. Put her and him? Yeah, great. Put him in there too. And now it's a war movie. Great. Put it, you know. I don't think they like even the greats of the previous era. You know, Howard Hawks and all those guys. They weren't like, we got to find a perfect script, and you know they kind of saw their jobs as like journeyman guys. Yeah. It wasn't a piece of art necessarily, and sometimes stuff would pop out. And Evans was like, well, let's like develop a book that people like and see
let's
like
find the right director.
Yeah. And like even something like a love story, it's like, as somebody who grew up years after that movie came out, like I do not get that shit. No. Like I don't understand it. I never got it. Like not that I have no desire to see it. I don't understand the Ally McGraw thing. Like I don't get like that whole like thing. I'm like, why would anybody watch this? How is this like the biggest movie in the world ever of all time when it came out? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
But Robert Evans looked at it and was like, this is what the people want. This is going to be this is going to be an important movie. So it was just like a new dynamic. Amazing. And he was like one of the guys at the beginning of that change.
I couldn't help but to think as I was watching this, how amazing it must have been to watch the world of cinema evolve in a way where we're just getting original story after original story, and not everything that is released is based on an existing intellectual property, a comic book, a theme park ride, or something that already exists that studios know will bring in dollars. And that's kind of his legacy. You know, he's involved in so many things that were great, but not because of something that already existed.
Well, maybe the pendulum will swing back a little bit.
I hope it does.
You know, there was a moment in the documentary when early in his career, Robert Evans is about to get fired, and he has to have a meeting with the board of Paramount. And I think he made a movie, like a video to show them. And he basically was like, "Hey, the movie business, like we fucked a lot of stuff up. Like people aren't into what we're doing anymore, you know?"
Yeah.
And it made me think of today. Whereas, like, somebody's going to come along and figure out a better way to do it than they've been doing it the last 10 years. Yeah. I hope. And if they don't, then the business will just disappear, I guess.
I couldn't help but to wonder who inherited Robert Evans's legacy after, his time was over. And the only names I could come up with, and while it's not a one-to-one comparison, I do think that these guys definitely accepted the baton that Evans was passing, would be Simpson and Bruckheimer.
I think I have to say you're probably right about that.
Yeah.
They were kind of the prototypical producers of the era after Evans.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Kid Stays in the Picture. It's rated 3.6 overall in Letterboxd. 9 users have it in their 4 favorites.
Interesting. I feel like this is a movie you can watch once and be done. You don't need to watch it again.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I've seen it a couple times.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
I think if you love movies, you have to watch this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I recommend reading the book also.
Yeah.
I have not listened to the audiobook. I imagine it's exactly like this this movie because he does read the audiobook, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 30% agree with my 4-star rating, including Letterboxd user Ben Crew, who writes in his review, "Shocking reveal halfway through that this man did not do cocaine until his 40s. Hollywood studio politics are endlessly fascinating to me, so this was a blast. Just an insane man talking about drugs, murder, and producing Popeye. Not a single other person is interviewed. More documentaries should be like that." So I'm putting The Kid Stays in the Picture on the shelf this week for Roberts.
Love it. It's a great way to round out your 3 Roberts picks.
He is in the conversation for the most important Robert in Hollywood history.
Oh, absolutely. He's high up there.
Yeah, he's definitely high up. If he's not at the top, he's very close.
I mean, I think you got Bobby De Niro somewhere in there as well. I made the decision to avoid any Robert Downey Jr. movies, but that guy's having,
Yeah, I think I feel like the movie business wouldn't be that much different if he wasn't,
That's true.
He's definitely had some success.
Yeah, he's made a lot of money for himself.
Same with Julia Roberts. She's obviously had a ton of success. I don't know that the movie business has been transformed by her.
Robert Evans is probably at the top.
He had a much bigger hand.
Yeah.
In the movie business of today than
Agreed.
Probably any other Robert, but
Agreed.
We'll think about it.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, 40 years from now, we could be looking back at the Bob's Burgers movies, and I assume there's going to be another one.
The producers of the Bob's Burgers movies
yeah.
changed Hollywood forever.
Well, fine pick. This one was fun to watch, again, especially if you like cinema. I'm going to bring my third movie to the table, the shelf as it were, and this one is from 1998. It's from the Meatballs as Currency section of the store. I've chosen The Wedding Singer. So back of the box. Robbie, a local rock star turned wedding singer, is dumped on the day of his wedding. Meanwhile, big bummer. Meanwhile, waitress Julia finally sets a wedding date with her fiancé Glenn. When Julia and Robbie meet and hit it off, they find that things are more complicated than anybody thought. Tagline, he's going to party like it's 1985. Which, I don't know.
Hey, I think that works on a poster.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think if you're trying to sell movie tickets,
but
it's good.
Yeah, that's fair.
Picture of Adam Sandler's dumb face, party like it's 1985. I think you're selling movie tickets.
Yeah. That's fair. So obviously, how does this fit the theme? Our lead character is named Robbie Hart. Robbie being a nickname for Robert.
Although did we get confirmation in the movie that he's actually named Robert?
We didn't get confirmation, but I treat it as a foregone conclusion.
Here's what I'll say. I don't care. I think if your given name is Robbie, we understand it as a version of Robert.
Yes.
Just like if your given name is Bobby.
Yeah.
That's a version of Robert.
Yep.
And I would have accepted it on this episode.
Great.
I was just curious. It was a matter of curiosity.
Oh, I understand.
I want to see his birth certificate. I want to see the long form birth certificate.
Well, as somebody who brought conservative Bob Roberts to the table, I can understand that point of view on wanting to check birth certificates. But yeah, we're going to assume that Robbie here is a Robert. I would say true of all of my characters in my 3 movies. There's some endearing qualities to this Robert. You know, he's just a great guy. His heart is in the right place.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I think you would associate with a Robert.
I think that's completely true about every Robert I've known.
Yes, I agree. So The Wedding Singer was born out of Adam Sandler's desire to do something other than his usual slapstick comedies. Of course, you know, I mean, like Waterboy and a half a dozen other Billy Madison,
Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, Big Daddy. I mean, like Sandler became known for a thing which he had established for himself, but he wanted to break away from that. I mean, clearly he had his sights set on potentially some more dramatic roles in the future, and he eventually got there. But this was the first time that I think we saw him venture away from just wacky comedy, which he was recognized for.
Yeah, there's a touch of it in his performance, but he's definitely trying to play a little straighter.
Yes. So yeah, this is a romantic comedy with a pretty rock solid emotional core. It takes place in the 80s, which I think works for it really well. The production design is great. The soundtrack full of bangers. And it just makes for a fun trip down memory lane for those of us who have that memory.
It's a fun, charming, it's a relaxing movie.
It's such a relaxing movie.
Whereas I don't feel like a lot of Adam Sandler movies you could say that about.
No, certainly not. Yeah. In fact, I don't even think
this is sweet.
I don't find myself wanting to go back to Adam Sandler's other movies the way I enjoy going back to this, especially movies from that time. You know, like Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, and all that stuff. I've seen them. I've laughed at them. I don't know that humor holds up for me as well.
I'm not looking to go back. To me, they're like summer camp movies.
Yeah.
Maybe like dorm room movies, but like once, I mean, I'm too old to go back to. I'm not interested in watching Billy Madison again or Happy Gilmore or whatever. You know.
They have their place.
I think 12 and 13-year-olds should be watching those movies all the time.
Yes. We also get Drew Barrymore here. So she plays the character of Julia. She was coming off a lot of dramatic roles at the time. This actually helped reestablish her as a bankable romantic lead. And the chemistry between Sandler and Barrymore, I think, is fantastic. It went on to result in 2 more movies where the 2 of them were romantic leads. So we had 50 First Dates and Blended that came years and years after this. But it all started with the Wedding Singer for the 2 of them. This was actually directed by a guy named Frank Carracci, who had previously directed Sandler in The Waterboy. But I think he understood what Sandler wanted to do with this, something a little different, and does it pretty well. And he was also heavily involved in just bringing this era to life in the way that we see it on screen, which is authentic-ish, not quite over the top, but definitely leans into some of the stereotypes of the 80s. And yeah, he I think he captured Sandler and Barrymore in a pretty great way. In addition to the 2 of them, we also get Christine Taylor, who some might recognize from Heat, Vision, and Jack, Ben Stiller's wife, and Alan Covert, who plays Sandler's friend Sammy. He's a frequent collaborator with Adam Sandler. He's in Big Daddy, Grandma's Boy, 50 First Dates. Why did I choose this? I actually think this might be my favorite Adam Sandler comedy. If I'm going to laugh at Adam Sandler, this one is the one that I would choose first.
Yeah, I can't think of any others that I would prefer.
Yeah. That's kind of how I feel too. So I was excited to rewatch this. I do think there's some stuff that just doesn't. It's not even that it doesn't age well. It just wasn't even funny at the time. Like his grandmother singing the Sugar Hill Gang or rapping.
Rapping Granny. It became like
it became a thing.
It became a
But
it became like a red flag is what it became.
Yes.
Even that, but it's a trailer moment.
It is. It's exactly a trailer moment. But
at least it was in 1998.
I think there's still a lot to like here. We got a great cameo by Billy Idol, who's got such a smooth voice.
Yeah.
But
he's a professional singer.
He is.
If you knew that.
His voice is how he makes his money. That and playing guitar. But of course we also get a great Robbie, as we talked about. A great Robert.
To get personal for a moment.
Please do.
I grew up as a Robbie.
Did you?
I grew up as a Robbie.
I grew up as a Bobby.
Interesting. I spelled my name the same way with an IE at the end.
Okay.
That's how I got the second B in my name, from Robbie.
Okay.
So I was a Robbie until, I can't remember, until I was like 13, until I became a man.
You're answering a question that so many customers ask. So,
don't tell them.
Okay.
Tell them to subscribe to the Rewind Video podcast, and they can hear all about it.
Wow. So you really, truly did feel
I understand where this guy is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he should have changed it to Rob or Robert or Bob at some point.
Yeah. So this was well received by audiences and critics. A lot of people found it charming. Strong performances here. 23% of Letterboxd users agree with my 4-star review, with 1,400 listing it among their 4 favorite movies, which seemed higher than I expected.
No, I think there's a wedding singer army out there.
Yeah.
People will go to bat for this movie for sure.
It's got some staying power. I think that it was fun to look back on when it was released. This time period, it's still fun to look back on now.
Yeah, and also like the way that we viewed the '80s in the late '90s.
Yeah,
is kind of funny to look back on.
It is. Yeah,
I don't know. It's also because like to us, I don't know. Looking back, it's like, well, the '90s actually weren't that different from the '80s.
They
like,
weren't.
What were you parodying? I mean, a little bit.
Yeah, there may be less neon, but otherwise, not.
I mean, the music wasn't that different, was it? It wasn't grunge.
So the user Sarah had an astute review with her 4-star rating. She said, yes, the ASCD-BCU. Adam Sandler Courts Drew Barrymore Cinematic Universe. This is the first entry in, and definitely the best of the 3.
Awesome.
So tonight we saw Roberts doing all sorts of compelling things in the world of cinema. They were flipping burgers, finding love, running for office, surviving the apocalypse, and more. The 6 Robert-tastic films we chose are Bob Roberts, The Bob's Burgers Movie, Leave the World Behind, Falling Down, The Kid Stays in the Picture, and The Wedding Singer.
Find us on the internet at rewindvideopod.com, and don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and review the show. You'll make your neighborhood Robert very happy.
You will. Rob, you might call our efforts at the staff recommendation shelf a work of art.
That's the biggest piece of feedback we get on a weekly basis.
Yeah. It's truly something to behold. And for that reason, we're going to focus our next theme on the notion of art in movies. As always, we'll have 6 films to fill the shelf, but if you need a recommendation in the meantime, feel free to hit us up for a movie to watch. And we'll see you next time.
Be kind, recommend.
Hail Satan.
Satan Roberts.